Hello my lovely viewers, welcome back to my studio. Today we are going to unbox something really cool that I have just received in the mail. It is a ZSCM dual tip brush and fine liner. What I will do is I will unbox them with you and try all the different colors, as well as go through different techniques that we can create with them. So make sure to watch till the end to get the most out of this little unboxing tutorial and see for yourself how well these dual tips will perform. Okay, so this is how it has come in. So it's a set of 132 colors. I'm actually quite excited about this because I normally don't use felt tips or anything like this. Now, these are watercolor fine tips, so let's have a look what we can do and what kind of textures we can achieve with them. But first of all, let's open up the packaging. Wow, so it comes, it's the back, here we go. It comes in this really interesting bag, which is handy, I guess, especially if, you know, there's quite a few of them there. So they've got the logo at the front. Oh, and there's a little pocket here, so I guess, you know, to put maybe your paper or something like this if you want to take this along. Oh wow, oh my gosh. If I would have received something like this when I was a kid, I think I would be absolutely over the moon. Like, it would be just absolutely wow. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Look how many. Wow. Just wow. Here's a little coloring book. So I guess this is to test all of the colors out. This is actually really lovely, you know, having that coloring in card. Oh, this is so cute. So yeah, definitely if you're into coloring, this can be very cute. Okay, let's have a look at what's in here. Oh, these look like a little tips for the actual pens, you know, if you need to change them or anything like this. So something like this can be quite handy, especially if you're planning on using this for a while. Now, I'm really excited to try them out because they're not your usual felt tips, you know, alcohol-based or solvent-based. These are water-based, so they're kind of like watercolor. Now, next step in this trial is swatches. So it has 132 colors, so I have prepared this chart. I really do have my work cut out for me. Got some more colors on this side as well, so I will film everything and show you quite quickly so that you don't have to spend all the time. The paper that I am doing swatches on is a cold pressed watercolor paper, just so you know, because just like paint, I'm imagining that these would perform differently on different kind of paper. This will be pretty much trialing the color, so I'm not trialing for any technique or anything like this. This will be our next step in this video. But here I'm just going to do a little swatch like this. See, this is a color number 1. And next I'm going to go in with my brush and water and dilute it and see how that flows. You know, what sort of a color it can give me when it's mixed up with water. So I will go through all of the colors and you'll be able to see what this whole set it looks like. Color number 2. Number 3. So far they're very similar, but I can definitely see that this one is a little bit cooler, this one's in the middle, and this one is quite warm. Number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's a lovely color. 9, 10, 11, 12, 16. I love how some of them are so soft and some of them are really sort of intense colors. 17, 18. Oh, look how lovely that color is. Oh, this is so beautiful. What a beautiful shade. It's almost like a greeny gray. 25. If you are enjoying this video, make sure to check out my Patreon page, where I share a lot of interesting and in-depth tutorials, as well as monthly giveaways, tutorial suggestions, voting, and so on. So make sure to go over there and check it out. Color 46. Now, what can I tell you so far? I think these are actually really amazing. You know, guys, I already said that before, I don't really use felts for my art, but now I'm actually wondering, why haven't I been doing that? They really well become diluted with water. If you have seen my video where I was testing out some watercolor pencils, I will tell you that this is just as good in terms of them turning from one kind of medium into another with just the use of water and the brush. So this is actually super exciting, and it's actually really easy to achieve that look as well. Like, you don't need to put a lot of work into it. The only thing that I have noticed is that some colors, and that seems to be the fluorescent colors, they seem to be a little bit harder to soften up and make them run. I don't know whether it's got something to do with the pigment or the binder that has to be, you know, within it, or maybe just because they're so light, it's not really visible once they start to run with water. But I've noticed that I have to work a little bit harder to get some kind of a staining power once I start to apply the water. But if you use them just as felts, they seem to be perfectly fine. So this is the color 49. Oh, that's a beautiful color. They'll be beautiful for anyone who loves to do florals, or, you know, if you're doing a sketch of a garden with flowers, that's absolutely gorgeous. And so far I'm actually really impressed with the you know, variety of colors, because if you think 132 colors, you know, I mean, you would have a lot of repetitions, and you do get some colors that are very close, and you probably could get away with just using one of them, but they still are a little bit different. You can still see that undertone, you know, maybe one is a little bit cooler, one is a little bit warmer. You can definitely see the difference there. Wow, look at that. 51. I also really love how some of them are super rich, and some of them are quite soft. You know, so they've got not a very strong sort of a staining power, so that'd be perfect for overlapping or doing stuff like that. But let's carry on with the swatching. Now, you guys, probably when I'll be editing this, I will probably cut out a lot of stuff, because this is taking me quite a while now, but I will make sure that I'll finish so you guys can see every single color in this pack. Color 53. Oh, another gorgeous one. And sometimes when you apply them, they look more similar, but once you actually dilute them, you can clearly see the difference. Color 64, 65, 66, 67. Yes, you see there's another variation where they look very similar when they're in full rich just application, but once you dilute it with water, you can definitely see how much cooler this shade is compared to this one. Okay guys, now I'm working hard swatching them here for you. I'm up to number 80. Gosh, look at these blues. They're so beautiful. It's actually a rainy day outside, and looking at those makes me think of summer and sea and sky. So beautiful. Color number 92. Another gorgeous one. Color number 98. 99. Let's see what's the 100. That's another blue. Oh wow, look at that. Yeah, this is definitely a color 100. I can see that few of the next colors on the chart are really nice, sort of a creamy toned shades. See, this is quite a light one. This is also quite a light one, but a little bit more pink than the previous one. Color 103. Oh, this is almost transparent. Very, very light. So is this one 104. 105. 106. How interesting. 107. This would be such a beautiful tone for a very pale skin, you know, in the shadow areas. 108. 109. This would be a beautiful shade for deep skin tones. I think this must be a skin tone section. 110. Now, another thing that I would like to say is that they don't seem to have any kind of a smell to them. You know, sometimes you can get felt tips and they have this unpleasant smell. Sometimes they're, you know, like for little kids sets, they sort of have the fruity smells and things like that. These are just like working with water, you know, watercolor. You don't really get much of any kind of a scent from these, which is actually quite nice and to be honest, quite refreshing as well. Number 126. Now I'm going to have to flip over and do some of the few last ones that I have on the other side. So color 127, and this is what it looks like when water is applied. And color 128, 129. It's almost like a really dark, cool brown. 130, 131, and 132. Now, after giving all of these a try, what can I tell you? Now, this is a really big set. I do believe that this brand do make smaller sets. I can't remember, like 60 colors, and what I will do is I will put a link in the video description for you guys to have a look at this. But when this set, I can definitely tell that there's a little bit for everyone. So if you are a floral artist who loves to create flowers and so on, then there are plenty of colors here for you, some more here. If you love working with animals and furs and things like that, like there are lots of different shades that I can see, for example, doing a leopard or something like this just by looking at these colors. They already seem quite inspirational. Now, these colors are absolutely perfect for those of you who love to work on skin tones. Now, something like this is quite good for really light skin tones, and then some of these overlapped can be really beautiful for deep skin colors. There are some on the back as well that can be quite good for shadows and things like that on the skin. And of course the skies and the water and the greens, really, really gorgeous. And so now that we have said hello to every single color, let's see what else these felt tips can offer us. First thing that I want to say is that they come with two tips. The brush tip, that's the one that you saw me using when I was swatching them, and the pen tip. So that is perfect for details and things like that. Now let's have a look how well they overlap over themselves. So first I will try it with the same color. So see, with the second layer, yes, you definitely get a thicker, sort of a stronger coverage. Now let's try again. Yeah, I probably would not suggest do it more than 3 times because I can already see that the paper is starting to fluff up. But yeah, you definitely can get away with you know, layering it up and making each color deeper. But of course, if you have a large set like that, you can see that you get all the different shades, so you can build it up from, for example, this shade to this shade if you want to make it, if you want to work from lighter to darker. And that is of course taken into consideration that you don't want to dilute it at all. So now let's have a look at how well they can layer over themselves but using different colors. So here I'm using this sort of a steel gray, and here I'm going to use a different sort of a shade. Yeah, I think that works like it normally would with any other, you know, felt tips. I think it does quite a good job. You can see the overlay of these colors. Now let's try to overlap it with another color. Yeah, you definitely get that beautiful transparency, and you can see colors popping up from underneath. So that can be a really interesting thing to play with if you're working on something. So here we go, another little test. Let's try a bit of light green over it. Very interesting. There isn't much sort of a dragging going on as well, which is quite nice if you want to keep the lines quite sharp, because remember, if you want them to run, you can always use water, which is let's try that. So I've worked on this one and it's been already a few minutes, so this should be dry. So let's see how well it will run once it's been dried up. Yeah, it's doing quite a good job. See, it's really running with the water, so it becomes, yeah, surprisingly, they're actually really easy to make, you know, make them move with water. The only thing that I would say, but again, it really makes sense, that if you go many times over a patch of paper, it sort of starts to fluff up, which means that the ink goes much deeper into the surface. So here you can see that it's not as easy to wash it out completely, but over here where we have one single layer, it's almost disappeared. I almost don't see that line anymore. And now let's see how well we can wash out that thin line as well. Yeah, I think it's doing a really beautiful job. I can't really see much you know, sort of marks that are left behind. Almost everything now is washed out. So it's quite an interesting, you know, material to use, I guess, and I really look forward to using that in some of the future tutorials as well with you, for you guys. Now let's have a look in terms of blending colors. Yeah, so see, if you really would like to blend them, I think using water in this sort of a way and the brush, you can blend them quite seamlessly, especially if you're just applying one layer, if you're not going over the paper many times. Oh, and have a look over here. See how beautiful we're getting these really beautiful cauliflower blossoms here. That's lovely. Wow, I'm really enjoying this. This is really interesting. I didn't expect them to be so easy and, you know, give in to water so much. I guess if you are prepared to work with them as in the watercolor, you know, technique, then this can be a big plus. But if, of course, if you want them to be 100% permanent and not run, even if you accidentally, you know, spray some water, then I guess this would be a letdown, and perhaps going for alcohol-based markers or solvent-based markers instead of this. Let's have a look at some of the techniques that you can create with these. Technique number one is just going over and using them as you would any normal felt tips, any normal brush tips, you know. And so of course you've got two sides, so they're perfect for writing, coloring in, or anything like this. Next technique is using them as watercolor and making them run. You see, you get a really beautiful watercolor-like material. And another is creating a puddle and then going over and letting your marker run into the water like that. And of course you can try and see that some colors perhaps would be a little bit more visible, especially if they're darker. See, like that there. This again can be an absolutely beautiful technique for florals and things like that. And you can see how beautiful these really lovely washes and contrasting edges that using this technique can create. Now another technique that I want to show you is somewhat different, but again, you can use it if, for example, this is all you have on hand. It's more of a, say, watercolor technique, but you can use these as a palette. So see, I've applied a little bit of this color here. Now I'm going to come in here, pick some of that color up and apply it to the paper, just like you would with normal paint. And in that way you can also overlap the colors and so on. So this can be a real fun thing to do as well. And they seem to dry quite quickly, although when you do use them as felt tips, I do find that these probably take just a tiny little bit longer to dry on the paper than alcohol tips. But again, you can, imagine the alcohol evaporates quicker than water. So also I'm working on watercolor paper. So again, on a different kind of paper, it would create a different result. There is also something else you can do. I'll just build up a couple of colors first. You can actually drip water on it as well and then see the effect that it can create, which means you can also flicker with your brush to create sort of a lots of little drips effect and so on. And now to see what we can create with these lovely felt tips, let's see and try them out in a little painting. Now I will do a tiny little sketch of a landscape. As usual, I would put a bit of masking tape on the edges. Now those of you who watch a lot of my tutorials, you probably know that I do like to create that nice crisp white edge. And of course, this is where my swatch sheet would really help me look at them, like this. It's a good indication of what they are, but it's hard to tell what they would look like when they are diluted with water and so on. So here I'm going to go for the color 87, so it just makes the job so much easier for me. I choose what I want here and then match it up with a number. So I have chosen these three colors for my sky, and also I'm going to use a really soft sort of a yellow, well, not necessarily yellow, but just a little bit of sort of that soft orangey look as well for the sky. So I'm going to use number 30. I'll use my watercolor brush, tissues and water as always. Okay, so let's try and see how this works. So I'm just going to apply the darker color on the top in this sort of a way. Then I'm going to add a little bit of the lighter color and brighter as well, a bit more bluey and purpley, and a little bit more of this color that's even more sort of a turquoisey. Now here on the bottom I'm going to add just a little bit of this sort of a really soft, warmer yellowy tint. So here I'm going to use a full-on watercolor technique, and I'm going to only use these felt tips. So let's see what we will get in the end. At the moment it's looking beautiful, so it's obviously diluting it and making it softer, and I really do have quite a good control over how much of it I want to dissolve, like whether I want to fully dissolve it or whether I want to leave a little bit on there. So here we go. So here I'm going to smooth this out. You see, it's working beautifully. I quite like this. And yeah, you've got quite a bit of time, so it's kind of is like working with watercolor. Now I'm going to use again the darker color that I used up here in the sky, and I'm just going to do almost like this faint little line and add just a little bit of almost like little waves and things of this color. And I will also grab this color 129, so this would be water, and let's add a little bit of water and see how that works. Oh, this is so cool. What I find interesting is that some of them run a little bit more than others, so you get that really interesting look to it. See, this dark color doesn't seem to run as much. But as I said, I'm really new with this. This is the first time I'm trying out stuff. So now on the damp, I'm gonna try and add a little bit more of that turquoisey shade. And again, soften it with a little bit of water. Yeah, you can definitely see how some colors are spreading so much easier than others. That's why it's always good to do a little trial test. Now I'm gonna go for color 99, and let's just add a little bit more green into the water and see if this color runs well. Yeah, this one seems to be in the middle. It runs quite well, but still the staying power is really strong still. So now I'm going to go back to this sort of a brownie color, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little bit of sort of the scene with rocks and a little mountain sort of a thing. And I guess this is where, just like with watercolor, if you want something white, you just leave white paper as this. See, here's another thing that I'm noticing. On the dry paper, it seems to be really, you know, just like the color blocks out. But on the damp, because this water area is quite damp, it's not as sort of opaque. And of course, we can create a little bit of the reflection in the water from these rocks. Now on the part where the reflection is, I'm just going to use a little bit of water to soften them. A little bit again. And now I'm going to take, which color should I choose? I'll choose one of these ones. Maybe color 23 to create a little bit of the mountains on the background. Let's see what happens if I use a little bit of water on it. I mean, you don't really have to, it looks good as is, but you know, just for the sake of it, this is a little trial artwork. There we go. This is very interesting. Of course, you know, as I said, you don't really have the white paint, but you can always do it as a mixed media and use gouache and some other things. Now I'm going to go for this color, which is color 93, which is pretty much black. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna just, this is still a bit damp, which is not good, and I'm just going to add a little bit more shadow on some of these areas on the rocks to create just a bit more contrast. And I'm also going to put a little boat in. So handy to have this shape to them as well, those tips. And I completely forgot, you can use this side as well with this, you know, with a really thin line. Now because this is white, see, it's sort of running a little bit, but it's okay. So I also want to add a little bit of a different color, and it'll be color 20 on the actual boat itself here, you know, just to give it a bit more shape. And I'm also going to use a little bit of that color that I used on the sky, just to bring it, you know, together. It's good to use similar colors and sort of make sure that they come through in different areas. It sort of ties the whole artwork together. Let's have a look. So this is what I tried to do here, is I've tried to create a landscape with using these felt tips and using water, so employing sort of somewhat of a watercolor technique with these. So now let's take the masking tape off and see if we like this or not. What can I tell you? I'll say that I quite enjoyed using these. Again, this is not something that I normally use for sketching. I usually use watercolor, but this was a lot of fun to use, and I could use some of the techniques from watercolor painting and a really large range of colors on this set. As I said, there are different size sets, I think, that are available, you know, that you can see for your budget and stuff like this. Probably would make a great present for someone. I know I would have been absolutely stoked to get this, say for example, when I was quite young, like a teenager. It would have been an amazing gift. As I said before, there is pretty much a little bit of something for everyone, because you can see all of these colors, you know, they can really work super well with certain things, you know, like portraiture, florals, landscapes, seascapes, and so on. And the cool thing is that you can overlap them, you can you know, make them run with water and so on. So it can be a lot of fun to work with these. I will leave a link under the video, so for those of you who might be interested to have a look at this. And thank you very much for sketching with me, and thank you so much to my Patreon supporters. You guys are absolutely wonderful. Wouldn't be able to do it without you. And I hope you guys have a lovely day, and as always, thank you so much for hanging out with me. See you in the next video, and make sure to check out videos that are popping up on your screen now.